Hi, everybody. I'm Ricky Heller from rickyheller.com. And I believe that you can eat delicious food, have fun with your friends and family, and continue to do all the wonderful activities that you want to do with your normal life, even while you're living Candida free. And that's exactly what I help people to do with programs and one on one coaching and all kinds of ways to learn to live happily Candida free. So, today, I want to talk a little bit about one of the things that actually plagued me for about 3 decades of my life, and that is depression. So, from the time I was in my teens into my early 40s, I suffered from chronic, ongoing, low grade depression. And it would get worse in the winter when the weather was glum. I had seasonal affective disorder in the winter. But the interesting thing that happened was when I cleared up my candida, depression was gone. And I'm basically a pretty happy person now. I get blue once in a while, but mostly I'm pretty good. And that was a direct result of clearing up the candida. So today's topic is number 4 in our little known candida symptoms, and that is depression. Well, in recent years, science, functional medicine, we've looked a lot at the gut and the microbiome. And you might have heard that we've recently learned that 70%, up to 70% of our immune system is located in the gut. And so that really opens up this whole question of how does our gut relate to the rest of our body and even our mental state? And I remember in nutrition school learning that when in an experiment they had given schizophrenics large doses of vitamin B6, and that had cleared up the schizophrenia entirely for a huge number of these people. And they realized that changing their nutrition could change their mental state. So I think that's a really key concept to keep in mind when we look at how candida and depression are interrelated. Now, there are lots of different ways that they are interrelated, and they all go back to gut health. But today I want to talk specifically about depression and serotonin because that seems to be the most common connection that most people make between depression, low levels of serotonin. When you go to doctors and they give you drugs like, or they prescribe drugs like Prozac, we're also often looking at low serotonin levels. So, but I should also mention that candida can also affect a whole host of other hormones. Like candida can affect your cortisol levels. It can affect your dopamine levels. It can affect your liver function, which in turn can affect the levels of nutrients that your body is able to absorb and use, and that can affect your mental state. So that's probably a topic for another day, way too much to do in a video. But today specifically, I want to talk about serotonin because that's the number one chemical that we seem to relate to depression and how that relates to candida and what we can do about it. So in recent studies, they have discovered that up to 95%, which is astonishing to me, up to 95% of serotonin production happens in the gut. And so obviously, if things are out of balance in the gut, that's going to affect, as I said, not only serotonin, but production of all the other hormones and chemicals that originate in the gut as well, not to mention your good bacteria and so on. So um, because of that, if you have candida, that can be a direct barrier to effective serotonin production. And what happens is, you probably know that candida, as it grows, it tends to crowd out the other organisms that normally reside on the gut wall. So, like your good bacteria, candida can crowd those out and it takes up residence on the gut wall, which creates kind of a barrier to serotonin because serotonin is a neurotransmitter that has to transmit messages through that intestinal lining. If candida is there, it's creating a kind of a barrier, which means you're not getting enough serotonin production, which in turn means that you're going to be low on serotonin in the rest of the body and you're going to feel it mentally. And that can result in feelings of depression, feeling blue. It can also result in feelings of anxiety for some people. So I would say, if you're feeling depression as I was, and you're thinking to yourself as I was, you know, there's nothing wrong with my life. Why am I depressed? I have a family that is good to me and loves me. I have friends. I'm going to school. I'm privileged in so many ways, yet I'm walking around feeling depressed. What is wrong with this picture? So if there doesn't seem to be any obvious reason for the depression, obviously if a loved one has died, or if you've gone through a divorce, or if you've had a huge change in financial situation, or any other of those reasons that could quite reasonably trigger depression are occurring, then that may not be the case. But I'm talking about depression for no apparent reason. So I would always consider Candida in those situations because it's quite possible that there is that imbalance going on in the gut. And there was one study in the Journal of Antimicrobial Agents that actually suggested that there's a two-way relationship between Candida and depression. So as I said, Candida can prevent serotonin production, but if someone is depressed, this is what I found fascinating. If you're depressed, obviously you already have lower levels of serotonin. That's one of the hallmarks of depression. But serotonin in the body works to keep Candida in check. So serotonin can actually keep Candida levels at bay. So if you're depressed, you're already starting with lower levels of serotonin than normal, which means you may not have enough to keep those Candida levels down, which means the Candida can then grow out of control. So you can get it from this side where Candida happens first, it lowers the serotonin, the result is depression, or where depression happens first, it lowers serotonin, or because of it, there's lowered serotonin. It then doesn't prevent the Candida from growing, and there's more Candida out of control. Personally, I don't care which one comes first, the elevated Candida levels or the depression. What I want is a way to recreate balance so that the Candida levels are down to normal and the serotonin levels are up to normal. That's all I care about. So I want to talk a little bit in the rest of this video about what you can do naturally to elevate your serotonin levels. And I'm going to preface this by saying, as I always do, I am neither a doctor, I am not a scientist, I am not a functional medicine expert. I am someone who has lived with chronic Candida for a long time and has learned to live Candida free well while treating my Candida and gone through most of these things that I talk about. So as I said, when my Candida cleared up, my depression cleared up. And what I'm going to tell you now, different ways to naturally elevate serotonin, because I was one of those people who refused the drugs. I've never been on a prescription antidepressant. And so for me, the natural way is always the preferable way. So I've tried most of these, but I will say before you do anything different in your diet or in trying to change the herbs or supplements or anything that you take on your own, as always, please consult with your own doctor, healthcare practitioner, because this is just me talking about my experience here. So here are some things that I have tried and some I haven't tried that you could try if you want to increase serotonin levels naturally. The first one, probably we've all done this, and this is the only one I'm going to say that, yes, it increases serotonin, but please don't do it. So probably most of us have, in one way or another, tried to eat something that's either filled with sugar or refined carbs because we get that immediate serotonin boost. But the problem with that is it's temporary, and then there's the crash after. So don't do that. However, you can consume complex carbs, which they do affect blood sugar levels on in a much slower way, a much more even, balanced way. And they can help over time to elevate serotonin and elevate your mood and the way you're feeling. So complex carbs are okay in moderation. In fact, one of the experts I read suggested that you absolutely need them to have proper serotonin levels. So complex carbs are things like whole grains, and if you're on an anti-Candida program, you want them to be just approved gluten-free grains, things like dried beans and legumes, and of course, all your veggies are complex carbs too. So use those, they're really good for your health, and they're going to help you to feel better over time as well. Another thing that you can do, and a lot of people are familiar with the tryptophan levels in things like turkey at Thanksgiving, is eat foods with tryptophan because tryptophan is actually a precursor to serotonin. So you need enough tryptophan in order to produce enough serotonin. If you're following a plant-based diet, there are some really good sources of tryptophan. So things like spinach are really good, nuts are really, really good, and particularly almonds, and then seeds. Sesame seeds, pumpkin seeds are two great sources as well. So if you try to consume some of those sources of tryptophan on a regular basis, then you'll have the tryptophan that allows your body to convert it into serotonin, and that can lead to increase serotonin production as well. A third thing that you could try is exercise. And exercise is just a natural way to boost serotonin. It doesn't have to be, cardio exercise, and you don't have to be exhausted when you're finished it. Just exercise to increase metabolism, and that's going to help to boost serotonin levels as well. And I know, I walk my dogs every day. There are some days if it's pouring rain outside, we may not go, or if I hurt my back or something like that, I have a tendency to pull my back on occasion. If that happens and I don't get to go, and I don't get to go do my regular exercise at the workout club, I feel it. I really feel it. It makes a huge difference. So if you're someone who's prone to that kind of mood swing, exercise can be a great help. The fourth suggestion I'm going to make is one that I have definitely tried myself and actually has worked for me. So they say that when we laugh and smile, our serotonin levels are increased, and science has shown this to be true. But you may have heard that your brain doesn't always distinguish between what happens in your imagination and what happens in real life. And that's part of the basis of using visualization to make things happen in reality. So, because according to the brain, the visualization has already happened. Pardon me, my nose is a bit itchy. So, with dealing with serotonin levels or low serotonin levels, if you force yourself to laugh and smile, that can artificially increase serotonin levels for a while. But as they say, fake it till you make it, and then you're going to find that you actually feel better in the long run too. And I got this trick from a book I bought years ago, and I'm going to search my bookshelf to find it so that I can share the name down below, because it actually did work. I think it was called something like "I Can Teach You to Be Happy." And one of the tricks this guy suggested was forcing yourself to laugh a certain number of times a day. The average happy person, I believe, laughs like 23 times a day or something, and they smile 60 something times a day. So if you can reproduce that, even if it's fake, then you can feel the difference. And I did this one winter when it was particularly gloomy, I felt, and I was suffering from seasonal affective disorder that winter, just feeling pretty blue most of the time. I started implementing this, and I would do it in the car, which I think is hilarious. So, at a red light, I go, and I would count them. Now it's making me really laugh. And I would smile. I would just smile at nothing. And I have to say, by the end of the winter, I was feeling a lot better. My mood was so much better. So you can influence serotonin that way. So try it. If you're alone and you go to the bathroom, whenever you're taking a shower, just laugh, smile. See if that can affect your mood. And then the last, or the fifth tip I want to give about increasing serotonin levels naturally is to, as your serotonin's increasing, you want to rely on other feel-good hormones that are already there. So you might try triggering oxytocin levels. And oxytocin, not to be confused with OxyContin, which is a very bad drug. We don't want OxyContin. But oxytocin is a natural hormone that is produced, for instance, they call it the cuddle hormone. So it's produced, for instance, when moms cuddle their babies and they look into each other's eyes lovingly, and they feel the love. It's that sort of slightly blissful feeling you get when you gaze into the eyes of someone you love. And what I found fascinating as someone who doesn't have children and never cuddled my own baby that way, a recent study that was done on people and their pets showed that when your dog stares into your eyes lovingly and you stare back lovingly into your dog's eyes, both the human and the dog produce more oxytocin. So they get that feel good, love you, cuddly feeling from each other. So if you don't have kids or they're not at home anymore, and a human that you love is not around, you can do this with your pet as well. And the oxytocin is going to help you just feel a little happier. So as the serotonin increases, you can use that sort of when you begin as a baseline. I thought that was a really cool tip. So I hope that was helpful, and that if you've been experiencing sort of depression for no apparent reason, you might want to look into Candida as a potential cause, and also try to raise your serotonin levels naturally while you're clearing the Candida, because it can take some time to clear Candida. And then when it's cleared, you may have better levels of serotonin. But while that's happening, you want to do some of these things to allow that to occur naturally. All right, I hope this was helpful. If it was, please do give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Or better yet, if you know anybody who might benefit from this information, please share it with them. And I will see you guys on